Hi there, gang. It's Blake again, and I just wanted to, I guess, kind of wrap up um, on the health issues part today, and then maybe go over some of like what I do from a day to day now, like what still affects me now. So the last video, I think that I had ended up with all the head issues and everything. So basically, I spent about 3 weeks in the hospital at Baylor whenever they did this procedure in my head, and we're just kind of figuring everything out. It was pretty rough, but like basically I made it through all of that despite all the odds. Like I came out, everything was okay. They gave me all these cognitive tests and all that just to make sure that I was doing okay and I was functioning well and all of that. So I mean, surprisingly, everything was pretty normal. Um, I have heard that that's super rare. I didn't really get into it very much. I didn't really want to. I was okay with knowing that I had made it through and we can just go from there. So from basically what I deal with now is a lot having to do with the ascites. Obviously the hernias are still just an inconvenience. But the main thing that I've had a couple of problems with is I still get like some internal bleeding every now and then. What causes this is like I get these things called esophageal varices, which in the like the is blood from like the portal vein, which is what sends blood from all of your digestive organs to your liver. Those can get a lot of stress on them, or like hypertension, like high blood pressure builds up in there. And so what those can do is get so large and like engorged that they can burst or start bleeding out. So I've had procedures done, I think 3 times now, and the most recently was within just the last couple of months. But what happens basically is I start to lose all color. My blood count drops super low. So I have to get blood tests like every 6 months or so, and go and see my liver doctor every 6 months. And around then he'll want me to go get a blood test before I come in and see him. And so this last time they had noticed, or my transplant coordinators in Dallas noticed that my blood count was really low. So she called and said, you need to go to the emergency room. Your blood count is this low and we don't want it to drop any lower than that. Because there was one time that I had gone in, the normal blood, where you want your numbers to be, the ideal is like 13 to 15. And I don't really know what units these are, but 13 to 15 is like perfectly normal. Anything above like 10, I think they're pretty much okay with, because that's typically where people will fall, is if not 13 to 15, then at least above 10. And mine, at the worst that it had ever gotten, had gone down to 4. And they're like, I honestly don't know how you're functioning right now, how you walked yourself in here, because usually someone who's got a blood level of 4 is going to be pretty fatigued, maybe disoriented, maybe you need help walking. But I had gone like up the stairs and down the stairs to get into the doctor's office, just to kind of see what was going on. And they're like, okay, so something's going on. We need to have like a GI gastroenterologist over here, and one's coming from the hospital next door to take a look at you. And basically found that I needed this banding done of these varices, because I was losing blood that way, and that's why my blood was dropping so low, because I was bleeding internally from these varices. So he went in and did this. They do like the scope where they put the tube down your throat, they're able to function the tool on the end, I guess, just to kind of maneuver it. Just crazy doctor stuff. but they give you anesthesia, put you under, and then do what they have to do. So the whole thing only takes about half an hour, if even that. So I mean, they gave me the IV of anesthesia. I mean, next thing I know, I'm like in there listening to them talk, and next thing I know, like I just closed my eyes. Whenever I opened it, like I heard them talking more. There was like someone had gone from the room who was there previously. They were talking about something slightly different, and I was a little disoriented, but it was over. So basically, like I closed my eyes. Whenever I opened them again, the procedure was done. And so what they did, they found like a couple of these varices and banded those. They basically put like a rubber band kind of around it to seal it off, and somehow that fixes what they needed to fix. So this happened once then, and my blood level went back up. It took a little bit of time. He had me take a couple of iron infusion, IV infusions, and I've been taking iron pills, like prescription strength iron pills. So those, on top of the infusions and the procedure, my blood level went back up to around, like, I think it was like 9 some, I don't know, but it got within the working range and they were okay. Then this second time it had gotten down to like 7, and I just kind of went in and they were having me stand around in the ER and all of that again. And this was around the time recently that COVID started breaking out again here in Texas. So the ERs were just like packed full of people. So I went one day, talked to my coordinator after I'd been there for several hours, and was like, hey, I feel okay. Can I just go home and call my doctor, like, whenever he comes back on Monday or whatever? Because this was over the weekend and he was out of town. So she was like, okay, yeah, I didn't think you were going to have to be there that long, so go ahead and go home, which they had already put like an IV in my hand, and just to get that started. So like I had to convince the ER to let me go because my coordinator said that I didn't need to stay there with all these people who clearly have COVID. I mean, clearly. The place was packed and we had like these plastic dividers in between us. But I mean, these people were not looking good, and I didn't want to be around all of that. And so they're like, well, I mean, we can't really let you go. I'm like, well, yeah, you can, because my doctors are like, I have set doctors already, and I can't sit here for more. I was already here for like 6 hours, and like I can't sit here in this environment really any longer. So we need to take all of this out, and I've got to go. Like, that's coming from my coordinator who's getting my transplant all organized and everything. So this is not what I need. So I ended up going back to see if they could do it a little faster. And then I was there again for another 8 hours, like the next day. So finally they let me go again, and then I saw my GI, and he did a different procedure. This one, he's like, okay, well, your bleed is super slow this time, so I don't think it's the varices, because that would have been a lot faster for you to lose that blood. So what I think had happened, and it's this thing called GAVE, GAVE. It's an acronym for something. I didn't look it up, but he showed me pictures of it, and it's basically, he's like, this is what it looks like inside the esophagus, and these tiny little holes kind of develop, and then sometimes blood will ooze out of those really slowly, and you might lose like a teaspoon of blood like a day, which I think is what's happening to you. So let's go ahead and schedule 2 infusions. After you've had the first one, then come back and we will do the procedure again with the scope. And if that's what I think it is, then we'll go in and fix it with like this procedure where they laser it, like thermal lasers that basically seal those little holes kind of like little ulcers, I guess, is what they looked like to me in the picture, but they're tiny, tiny. Um, so I got an infusion. Um, I went in and did that procedure with him, and he said, yeah, that's what it was. And there was some little spots where the blood was like very slowly oozing out. So we sealed those off. You'll get your second infusion, and then, or actually, I think that, anyway, it doesn't matter. But he's like, in a month, I want to have your blood tested again. So I went back, this was just in the last few weeks, and had my blood tested again, and my hemoglobin had gone up to like 12.9, which was almost perfect. Like 13 to 15 would be absolute ideal, and mine was like 12.9, which I don't think it's been that high since I got this diagnosis. So I mean, everything is going pretty much as well as I could possibly hope for. I took my, they recommend a low sodium diet, which I try to stick to for the most part, but they also, like, you have to eat a lot of protein, because otherwise you're gonna lose all of this mass, which, I mean, so like there was a point when I was weighing like 130 pounds, and like I should be at like 150 at least. But now I've gained enough, like 160 is kind of where I sit now, which is good because it's not all like in my abdomen. Some of it is, but I haven't had like a drain. We haven't had to do a paracentesis since April. So, I mean, it's been really, like, this has stayed under control. It fluctuates a little bit, but not a whole lot. I usually will wait until like I'm gonna have a procedure or something, and then I'll go get a paracentesis right before, just to kind of get down to, just to clear out whatever might have gathered in there. But for the most part, I control it pretty well on my own. I've started eating like a ton of protein, as much as like I can, because I kind of got turned off of meat in general for a long time, which, I mean, and I don't like eggs. Beans are okay, but I mean, a lot of the protein things that are the easiest to get, I don't like them. And meat was getting to a point like that for me. But luckily I found a few things that are like super high in protein, which I will go over at another time in another video. But so basically, like, I've been able to put on this weight, and it doesn't really show so much in my face because it's kind of got to distribute throughout my entire body. So, because I mean, I was losing muscle mass wherever it had been before. So I put on all of this stuff, and immediately, like, my body just wants to put all of that protein to use. So it just uses it up so fast to fill up all the gaps where it needs to be. So I mean, it doesn't really look like it all the time, but I mean, I really couldn't be doing better for the situation that I'm in right now. And next time that we talk, I'll go over like the transplant situation, how they kind of decide who gets a transplant, what the living donor transplant is, because right now my score that puts me on the spectrum of getting a transplant is low enough that anybody who's a lot sicker than me immediately goes higher on the list than I do. But also, while I'm young, they're like, it kind of puts us in a bad situation, because right now you're young enough that you could make a full recovery and live a pretty healthy life after. Whereas some of the people with the really high scores are, once you hit a certain point, then it's too high, and they're really like, this is just, it's a risk that we don't need to take, when this liver could go to someone who is going to make a full recovery, or has a better chance of making that recovery. So that's where living donors come in, because if you get on the living donor transplant list and you're able to find your own donor, then immediately that transplant can happen. You don't have to wait anymore. You just have to be on that list. then and register with your hospital who's going to do the procedure, and then they will test candidates for you, like people who are blood type matches and all of that. If you pass that initial stage, then you start going through a series of tests, and they can do one person at a time. Like they'll test one person at a time until they find a perfect match. And so that's basically where I'm at right now. So as soon as I can find a donor that is a perfect match, then pretty much I'll get the call, we'll schedule the surgery and go from there. And then it's all up to just getting the surgery done and starting the healing process. All right, if you found today's video helpful or at all encouraging or even interesting, don't forget to subscribe to my channel and like this video. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you next time.